Okay, right. So 1.1.1 reads as follows. The formula I plus J plus X represents dash in an open economy. So now I stands for investment, then J stands for injections, while X stands for exports. So now when we talk of an open economy, when you talk of an open economy, is the economy where foreign sector is actually included. But closed economy, we exclude foreign sector. We only consider only three market participants for closed economy. But when it comes to open economy, we take into account four market participants. So remember, these market participants are decision makers in an economy. And these market participants, we have the likes of households, the likes of foreign sector, the likes of government, as well as the likes of businesses or firms. Okay, right. So now, in option A that we have injections. Option B that we have leakages. Option C that we have expenditure. And the last option that we have exports. So now, if we check what I is an investment, and that if in an economy we have an investment, that means that we are going to have the inflow of money into the economy, as well as the injections. If we have as well injections, it means that money is coming into the economy. Also the exports, if the economy is having more of the exports than imports, it means that goods and services that are locally produced are being sold to the rest of the world. So in return, that particular economy receives receives income. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer for 1.1.1 is in this regard A. Okay. Okay, right. So now moving on to the second question. Second question, we have 1.1.2. It reads as follows. The outer turning point of a business cycle is known as dash. So now, remember grade 12, whenever we are talking of the business cycle will refer to the upswings and downswings of the economic activities. Or we can actually say that these business cycles take into account the fluctuations of the economic activities. So now, when we talk of the turning point that you're actually referring to, we are referring to the likes of a peak or a boom, or the likes of a trough. When an economy is at a boom, it means that all economic activities are performing very well. So it means in that particular economy, there is employment opportunities, as well as businesses generating enough profit. Also, the standard of living for the household as well, it is improving. So now we also have the trough as a turning point. So trough as a turning point, at this turning point, the economic activities are totally poor, meaning the economy in this regard, it is failing to create employment opportunities. The households are poor, they are struggling, there is low standard of living. When you check the business side, businesses are not generating enough profit. Also, when it comes to foreign sector, we have more of the imports than exports. While under a boom or a peak, that's where an economy is having more of the exports than imports. Remember, grade 12, it is healthy for any economy to have more of the exports than imports. Why do we say that? Because when the economy is having more of the exports than imports, that is the indication that local businesses are able to generate enough goods and services that can satisfy local households, and then they can have the access that they can export to other countries, or they can have access that they can sell to the rest of the country. Okay, right. So now in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be a peak. A peak is a turning point that you are referring to at this regard. Because now, if we check, let's check the diagram that I have. So this point here, it is a turning point, and this point is called a peak. And then this point here, it is a turning point that is called a trough. So one might ask, why actually do you say a peak? I'm saying a peak because of the word par. Okay, thanks. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question, we have 1.1.3. So 1.1.3 reads as follows. The estimation of future revenues and expenses over a period of time is known as dash. So here we are estimating. And remember, you learned about estimation when we were dealing with the business cycles. So if you still remember under business cycles, we did talk about different set of concepts like a moving average as well as extrapolation. And we did say that when we talk of the moving average is the concept that is actually in line with the forecasting of the performance of the business activities. But this forecasting, it is actually being done in line with the current trends that are taking place. But when it comes to extrapolation predictions are actually done, or estimation are actually done based on a historical data, or actually on events that took place long back. Okay, right. So now, if we check the given options, we have option A that takes into account the aggregate demand, and option B, we have the budget, and option C, we have the finance, and option D, we have the expenditure. One might ask, why is it so important to go through all the given options? Because most of these answers, they are pretty close to one another. So any mistake, you find that you will select the correct answer, but not the appropriate answer. So that is why it is always advisable for you grade 12s to always apply the elimination method. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be B. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, grade 12s, we have 1.1.4, and 1.1.4 reads as follows. The deliberate increase in the value of a rand in terms of the other is called dash. So now here we are talking of the value of rand. So grade 12s, if you still remember, we dealt with different set of topics, and this concept, it does fall under the topic that is called Forex, foreign exchange market. So now, when we talk of the appreciation is when a currency gets more strength compared to other currency. Here, there's no institution that is in between to make sure that it does regulate or it does monitor what that value of currencies that are actually being compared on a table. But now, when it comes to revaluation now, it calls for the intervention of the central banks. So in South Africa, the central bank that we have is called South African Reserve Bank. So now it means that revaluation is when the South African Reserve Bank chips into the market of Forex to make sure that they give value to a given currency compared to other currency. So now also we have overvaluation. So overvaluation is when a currency is overvalued when compared to the other currency. So remember, I said that this one of valuation, revaluation or devaluation, those two concepts, they take into account the intervention of the institution that is in charge of money supply. So in that regard, the institution that is in charge of the money supply is South African Reserve Bank or any central bank. So remember, grade 12s, only central banks are able to print out money. There's no other institution that can engage into printing out of money or that can engage into regulation of the flow of money. Okay, right. So now let's check the appropriate answer that we have in this regard. So the appropriate answer that we have is a revaluation. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now moving on to the next question, we have 1.1.5, 1.5. So 1.1.5 reads as follows. The removal or reduction of restrictions on the free exchange of goods between nations is known as dash. Okay, right. So now remember here there is a removal. So it means that now they want to suspend the barriers when it comes to the flow of goods and services amongst different set of countries or just between countries. So now we also have free exchange. This free exchange rate is one of the types of exchange rate system. And this one that is free, it means that there's no government intervention. There's no regulation here. There are no custom duties that are actually being paid upon borders whenever there are exports or imports of goods and services that are taking place amongst or between different set of countries. So now, in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C, which is trade liberation. So remember, when we talk of trade liberation is the suspension or the removal of rules and regulations when it comes to the flow of goods and services between or amongst countries. So in this regard, it means that trade liberation takes into account the removal of restrictions when it comes to exports and imports of goods and services. Okay, right. So now our appropriate answer is going to be C. Okay, so now moving on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.6, and 1.1.6 reads as follows. A retrace measure that focuses on land for residential and production for previously disadvantaged group is known as dash. So now, if you still remember grade 12, I told you that you should always go through the given options. So now, if we check the appropriate answer in this regard, it is going to be land redistribution, which is C. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.7, and 1.1.7 reads as follows. A cash grant to build or expand physical infrastructure is a dash. So now, because of a word grant, this actually means that there wasn't any job that has been performed. Also, it shows that there wasn't any service that has been rendered. This was just the capital transfer. This was just the transfer of money without any work being done and without any service being rendered. So if we check, we have foreign investment grant. So foreign investment grant, this is the grant or the donation that comes from other countries, from the other spheres of the world. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C. Okay, grade 12, right. Let's move on to the next question. The next question reads 1.1.8, and 1.1.8 reads 1.1.7. Sorry, this is supposed to be D. Sorry, this is supposed to be D, which is critical infrastructure program. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.1.8. 1.1.8 reads as follows. An economic indicator measured by dividing the real GDP by the number of workers employed is referred to as labor productivity. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question. Next question we have 1.2, and 1.2 reads as follows. Choose a description from column B that matches an item in column A. Write only a letter. An example is given there, A to I, next to the question numbers. Also, an example is given there, 1.2.1, to 1.2.8 in a given answerable. So an example, or a typical example, is as well given, which is 1.2.9 as J. So remember, grade 12s, I always tell you that whenever you are dealing with this matching concept, make sure that you go through column A to identify all the given concepts. Then from there, you go to column 1, you go to column B to check all the given description. Remember, in column B, you can either be given the characteristics, you can either be given the definitions, or given the explanations, or given the feature, or any function that is in line or in relation with the concepts that appear in column A. Okay, right. So now column A, we have the system of national accounts, we have the real business cycle, we also have a deficit rule, we also have absolute advantage, we also have quota, we also have economic growth, we also have a special economic zone. As well, we have what we have prime interest rate. Okay, right. So now if we check our 1.2.1, 1.2.1 is a system of national accounts. Before you can even go to column B, you must create that picture to check what is this system of national account. When we talk of the system of national account, it is nothing but a set of international guidelines for reporting statistics comparable across all countries. That is the system of national account. So now when it comes to 1.2.2, which is real business cycle here, we are talking of the macroeconomic model that suggests that fluctuations as a result of technological changes. Okay, right. So now let's check the next concept. Next concept, we have deficit rule. So now this deficit rule, it is the budget shortfall not exceed 3% of GDP borrowing. That is our deficit rule. So now moving on, we have 1.2.4, which is absolute advantage. So when I'm coming across this concept, it reminds me of comparative advantage. So now, as a grade 12 learner, especially when you are about to land into examination now, you should always be in a position to distinguish between the absolute advantage as well as the comparative advantage. When we talk of absolute advantage is when a country has the ability, when the country has the ability to produce more of the outputs using the same resource like other countries. So that is the absolute advantage. So in that regard, then we can actually say that a country that is able to spend a country that is able to generate a certain outcome, having used a certain resources compared to other countries, then in that regard, you say that that country has more of the absolute advantage compared to other countries. Okay, right. Let me take an example. I'll take an example of South Africa as well as United States of America. Okay, say South Africa to produce 8,000 units, it does engage in 100 rand. So now also United States of America to produce 1,000 units, it does engage the use of 100 rand. So if you check these two countries, they have used the same resource of 100 rand. But now if you check the output is quite different. The output for South Africa is 8,000, but the output for United States of America is going to be 10,000. So in that regard, then we can say that United States of America has more of the absolute advantage than South Africa. Why? Because using the same resources, it does achieve higher outcome compared to South Africa. Okay, right. So now, when it comes to comparative advantage, in comparative advantage, we check the spending on the vectors of production so as to produce an expected outcome. So here I'm still going to I'll compare South Africa and United States of America. Say that for South Africa to produce 10 units, it does spend 20,000 on labor. In United States of America, to produce 10 units, it does spend 10,000 on labor. So in that regard, we are going to say that United States of America has more of the comparative advantage when it comes to the production of those units. Why are we actually saying that? Because now, United States of America, it is spending less on labor, or it is spending less on vectors of production to attain higher outcome. So here, when it comes to comparative advantage, we check the ability of a country to produce higher output, engaging the use of less resources, or there is less spending. So grade 12, if you still remember, under economics, we aim at maximizing the output together with the minimization of the spending. That's the motto of economics. We should always try, by all means, we don't spend more, but we have to maximize whatsoever return that we have actually anticipated. So those are the concepts of the comparative advantage as well as the absolute advantage. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.2.5, which is a quota. So now, when we talk of this quota here, we check what the fixed and predetermined quantity that can be important among a set of countries. That is a quota. We check that quantity. I'll make an example of South Africa, even though I'm not quite sure of the quantity, but there are those goods and services that do have quotas upon borders there. Say you go to Botswana to buy a milk, then there will be a certain liters that you are allowed to step into South Africa with. Say, for typical example, a quota for milk, say it is 20 liter. If when in Botswana, you buy 50 liters of milk, then upon the borders, they'll only allow you to come in with what? With the expected quantity. The same thing applies with eggs as well. If in South Africa, they tell you that the quota of eggs is 10 trays, then it means that if you go to Botswana to buy trays, you're expected only to import 10 trays, not more than that. Because the moment you buy more than 10 trays from Botswana, and now you want to step into South Africa with those more than 10 trays, while a quota says 10 trays, then it means that they are not going to allow you to enter with those trays. They'll only have the maximum of 10 trays. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now we have 1.2.6. 1.2.6, we have economic growth. So now we also have economic development, because economic growth and economic development, they are a pair. They always go together. So when we talk of economic growth, we refer to the improvement of production of goods and services by different side of businesses or firms. Here we only check the improvement in terms of production of goods and services. But when it comes to economic development, we check the improvement when it comes to the standard of living of the household. So it means economic growth takes into account the decision maker of the firms or the business, while economic development only takes into account a decision maker, which is the household. Okay, right. So now, if we check the options given here, for 1.2.1, we have option option E. So now for 1.2.2, we have option G. So now for 1.2.3, we have option F. And then for option 1.2.4, we do have H. So now when it comes to 1.2.5, we have B. And when it comes to 1.2.6, which is economic growth, we do have C. And then when it comes to special economic zone, which is 1.2.7, we do have I. And then when it comes to 1.2.8, we do have D. Okay, so now let's check the special economic zone. Guys, if you still remember, South Africa as an economy, it did rely largely on agriculture as the major contributor of GDP or towards GDP. So now the South African government tried its level best to make sure that they improve the performance of our secondary sector, so that also secondary sector can contribute largely towards GDP. I'll explain GDP, don't worry. So now what it did, South African government, it did try by all means to improve the performance of the industries. Remember, when you talk of the word industry, we refer to group of firms that sell the same product. So now what they did, they bring this program that is called a special economic zone, of which it does focus on those areas where South Africa has a belief that the moment they spend much of their resources towards those areas, then those areas are actually going to boost when it comes to the improvement of the South African economy. Okay, right. So now I did mention GDP. GDP is a gross domestic product. So this gross domestic product, we refer to the total monetary value of all goods and services that has been produced within borders of a certain country. Usually we check the time frame of a year when we take into account the GDP. Okay, right, grade 12. So what I can actually tell you guys, whenever you are doing the revision, in particular when you are using the past exam papers, make sure that you also have different set of reference. Don't only refer on the teachers or educators' notes, because lesson notes are very brave. So in order for you to broaden your understanding, in order for you to broaden your knowledge, make sure that you visit different resources, because the moment you visit different resources, they do explain concepts in different set of manner. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have 1.3. So now 1.3 reads as follows. Give one term or word for each of the following descriptions. Write only the term or a word next to the question number. An example is given there as 1.3.1 to 1.3.6 in your answer book. So abbreviations, acronyms, and examples should not be accepted. And I know most of you grade 12s, whenever it comes to this set of questions, you love giving abbreviations or acronyms. Try by all means to avoid that, because the moment you do that, you are going to be penalized. Okay, right. So now the first question, which is 1.3.1, reads as follows. A portion of consumption that varies with disposable income. So now the appropriate answer that we have, or the concept that we have here, is nothing but in-use consumption. And remember, this in-use consumption that we are referring to that consumption where the spending is done by the household, where there is no earning of any set of income. Okay, right. So we are saying that this is in-use consumption. This is in-use Consumption. Consumption. This is in used consumption. This is in used consumption. Okay, right, grade 12. So now moving on to the next question. The next question we have 3.2, and it does read as follows. Statistical tool used to analyze the changes in a series of data over a certain period of time. So remember when I was explaining the concept of business cycles, I did take into account, or I did explain what moving average is, as well as extrapolation. And I did even say that these are the two concepts that are in line with the prediction. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer for this one is moving average. I did explain it when I was explaining the concepts and the business cycle. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.3. And 1.1.3 reads as follows. A situation where one country has a relative advantage in the production of goods or services. So now a country can only have a relative advantage when it comes to the production of goods and services when it doesn't spend a lot of money, or when it doesn't spend a lot of resources, where it doesn't engage into lot of expenditures on inputs or on vectors of production. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be comparative advantage. This is comparative advantage. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, moving on to the next question. We have 1.3.4, and 1.3.4 reads as follows. A policy where the state discourages the importing of certain goods and services so as to protect local industries against unfair competition. Okay, so now the moment the government comes into play, when there is a flow of goods and services amongst different set of countries, that calls for what you call protection. So now that concept is going to be called protectionism. So this is protectionism. This is protectionism, where now the country is trying by all means to protect its industries. And remember, I did say that when you talk of an industry, we refer to different set of businesses that do sell the same commodities or the same product. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.3.5. So 1.3.5 grade 12 reads as follows. A government initiative to attract infrastructure and business investments to neglected and underdeveloped areas. So, okay, if you still remember, guys, when I was talking of the special economic zone, where the government tried by all means to identify the potential angles that can help them to improve the South African economy towards economic growth as well as economic development. So now, those initiatives, there are many, but now the ones that you are given here is called Special Development Initiative. This is Ashal. Yeah, I know some of you love to say special. This is not special. It's Special Economic Initiative. Special Economic Initiative. Haha. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.3.6. An indicator to increase, an indicator to measure changes in the prices of goods produced locally when they leave the factory floor. So that is nothing but the producer price index. This is producer price index. Okay, right, grade 12. So now, since we have already landed into the concept of producer price index, and remember, they fall under the umbrella of inflation. So I'm also going to discuss the issue of consumer price index. Okay, right. So now I'll start from the umbrella of inflation. What is this inflation? When we talk of an inflation, we actually refer to a persistent or continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services. I know most of you grade 12s, when it comes to inflation, when you say the continuous or persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services, when there is an increase in the price on the price of loaf, and you see there's increase on the price of banana continuously, you start saying that there is an inflation. No, that is totally not inflation, but it is called price hike. Why price hike? Because only two commodities prices are fluctuating, not all the commodities. So that is why we're actually saying that inflation is where the general price level of all goods and services what are increasing on daily basis. Okay, right. So now producer price index. So this one we check the spending of businesses or producers on their vectors of production. It means that if there is producer price index, it means that businesses or firms, they are now spending a lot of money on the vectors of production or the inputs that are necessarily needed when it comes to production of goods and services. So it means for businesses to produce goods and services, they keep on spending different set of amount, because now prices keep on changing. So now when it comes to consumer price index, here we check the basket of goods and services. So it means that now here consumers keep on spending a lot of money on different set of goods. Meaning producer price index takes the side of the producer, which is businesses or firms. But consumer price index, we check the spending or the fluctuation of prices on the side of those who buy goods and services, in short, the consumers. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question, grade 12s. The next questions that we have 1.1. So in particular, 1.1.2. So 1.1.2, it does read as follows. An injection into the economy will lead to dearth. And then we have option A to option D. And remember, grade 12s, I told you that in order for you to master this set of questions, you should always apply elimination method. When you apply elimination method, you go through each and every option given. You go through option A, you go through option B, you go through option C, as well as option D. Because sometimes you can just land on one option, say option D, then you find that at the end of the day, option D is not the one that is mostly precise when compared to other questions, because here precision here should always be taken into account. So meaning for 1.1.1, our appropriate answer is going to be a D, which is increase in the national income. Here, when you talk of the national income here, we check the income that comes from the household, which is consumption by the household. Also, we check the investment by firms, and also we check the government spending, and as well as the net export. Remember, net exports, we take into account the exports minus imports. Why should it always be export minus imports? Because it is always advisable for any set of economy to produce a lot of goods and services that can satisfy the needs for local people, and after that, the excess should be sold into the other countries. So now it is so bad for any economy to have more of the more of the imports than exports, because imports, it means now there is outflow of money. There are resources that are actually being pumped into other countries, unlike resources being pumped into our country. Like exports, you're expecting other countries to come and purchase goods and services from our country. So in that regard, it means that there is inflow of resources into our country, and at the end of the day, that is going to increase or to boost the performance of the economic activities, and at the end of the day, we are going to attain higher levels of economic growth as well as higher levels of economic development. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be D. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 1.1.2. 1.1.2 reads as follows: an economic indicator that changes only after the changes in the economy has taken place is called a dash. Okay, right. So now, grade 12s, remember in the aforementioned or above mentioned question, we did explain the concept of the business cycle, and we did say that business cycle, we check the fluctuations of the business activities, or we check the upswings and downswings of the business activities. So in order for the economy to be in the position to check the upswings and downswings of the economy, so then it means that there should be a prediction as well taking place there. And also, in order for the economy to predict, or the economists to predict, it means they should be in the position to know the signs of the current economic activity. So when we talk of an indicator, we refer to a sign, whether in economics or whether in any other discipline. When we talk of the indicator, we actually refer to a sign. So an indicator is a sign that shows or indicates where the economy or an economy is heading. Okay, right. So now I am going to explain all the given sort of these indicators. So now let's talk of the lagging indicator. When you talk of the lagging indicator, this is the sign or the indicator that change after the economy has already changed. So it means that lagging indicator, it does change after the economy has already changed. Then we have what? Then we have coincident indicator. Coincident indicator is an indicator that changes the same time there is a change in an economy. So it means this one, there is a simultaneous change. Once the economy changes, also this coincident indicator changes. So we also have a leading indicator. A leading indicator, this is the indicator that changes before there is any change in an economy. So it means that leading indicator is the one that can actually give you to predict way better than other indicators. Why? Because it does change before the economy can actually change. So we also have composite indicator. Composite indicator, it is an indicator that combines all of the indicator. It does take into account the lagging indicator, the coincident indicator, as well as leading indicator. Okay, right. So now, since here the question says that an economy indicator that changes only after there is a change in an economy. So as I said earlier, grade 12, that we have lagging indicator does change after the economy has changes. Coincident does change the same time with the economy. We have leading, it does change before the economy changes, and then you have composite, which takes into account all other three indicators. So because of a word after, it means that this calls for lagging indicator. And if you check out from the given set of options, our our lagging indicator appears as option A. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.3. 1.1.3 reads as follows. In the circular flow model, businesses dash. Okay, right. So now since we have actually landed on the concept of the circular flow model, I am going to explain to you what is this concept. When we talk of a circular flow model, this is the flow of production of goods and services. This is the flow of spending. And also, this is the flow of vectors of production. So it means that when we are saying this is the flow, we are going to check how money flows between the market participants, which is the household, firms, government, as well as the foreign sector. Also, we are going to check how vectors of production do flow amongst those four market participants, and we are also going to check income as well as the expenditure. Okay, right. So now the question says, in a circular flow model, businesses dash. Grade 12, if you still remember, households are the primary owners of vectors of production. So households are the ones who do own a land. They are the ones who do own ownership. They are the ones who do own capital. They are the ones who do own labor. That is why we are actually saying that they are the primary owners of vectors of production. So it means that without households, we can't have firms. Without households, we can't have government. Without households, we can't have different sector. So it means that households are the engine of this car, of this vehicle. Okay, right. So now let's check. We have option A, we have option B, we have option C, we have option D. Remember, grade 12s, I did tell you that you should go through all the given set of options, because most of these options, they are pretty close to one another. Okay, right. So now, in the circular flow model, businesses dash. So now businesses dash, they do what? They do sell products and buy vectors of production, of course. So it means in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C. Why C? Because businesses need what they do, buy or purchase vectors of production from the household. Why do they purchase vectors of production from the household? Because in order for them to process or manufacture goods and services, they need vectors of production, which is labor, capital, land, as well as entrepreneurship. So now, after they have produced goods and services, they now in return sell those finished goods and services back to household. So that is why we're actually saying that the appropriate answer in this regard is going to be C. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.4. So 1.1.4 reads as follows. The difference between the value of countries' exports and the value of a country's imports for a given period is known as a dash. Okay, right. So now this dash that we are referring to, let's check. We refer to the balance of trade. This is nothing but balance of trade. But remember, grade 12s, I told you that you should always go through all the given set of options. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.1.5. 1.1.5, we do have the discontinuation of international trade and investment with a particular country is known as dash. So let's talk of the international trade. Okay, when you talk of the international trade, before I can even move on to international trade, let's explain a word trade alone. When you talk of a word trade, there's no processing, there's no manufacturing of goods and services. But in this regard, goods are actually being bought from the supplier with the aim of resale. Nothing is being processed and nothing is being actually manufactured. So now when it comes to international trade, it means now there is buying and selling of goods and services between countries. When we say between countries, it means now we are talking of two countries. And when we are talking of two countries, and that trade that you are referring to, it is called bilateral trade. Bilateral trade is when two countries are buying and selling goods and services between them. And also we have what we call multinational trade. So multilateral trade is when more than two countries do buy and sell goods and services amongst one another. Okay, right. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C, which is sanctions. Yes, why sanction? Because of this continuation. Because of this word, this continuation. It means here now the flow of goods and services amongst or between those two countries or amongst those many countries now, it does stop. So in that regard, we say that is a sanction. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.1.6. 1.1.6 reads as follows. A physically enclosed area next to a harbor or airport where the production of exports is encouraged is known as a DOGE. So that is nothing but special economic zone. Okay, right, grade 12. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.7. 1.1.7 reads as follows. Which of the foreign development initiatives is the most successful in South Africa? So the most successful one in South Africa is Maputo Development Corridor, which is our option B. Okay, right. So grade 12, moving on to the next question, we have 1.1.8. 1.1.8 reads as follows. The ratio between import and export prices is known as terms of trade, which is our option D. Okay, right. So now grade 12, let's move on to the next question, which is question 1.2. Remember 1.2, we are dealing with matching concept. And matching concept, if you still remember, I told you that you should always go through our column A, where it does contain concepts. Make sure that you create a picture of each and every concept before you can even jump onto a given description on column B. Remember also column B, I did say that column B, you can either be given functions or characteristics or features. Okay, right. So now let's check what we have on our plate. We have depression, we have aggregate demand, we have economic stability, we have international monetary fund, we have Johannesburg Security Exchange, we have structural employment, we have strategic industries, and as well as economic development. Okay, right. So now here the depression, if we check the depression, you must create that picture of depression. What is this depression? So if you still remember, we dealt with the business cycle, and then on the business cycle, we do have a trend line, and this trend line, we said that it does measure the long-term economic growth in that particular country. And then, if you still remember, we did as well in the above mentioned questions or the aforementioned questions, we did discuss the issue of the turning point. We did say this is a pig, this is a pig, and this is a trough. So now we have what we have before we have the downswing here, and this downswing before the trend line, and then also you have the downswing below the trend line. Here we have what? Here we have depression here, and then here we have recession. So it means that the moment an economy has reached this depression, it is totally bad. Why are we saying totally bad? Because if you check our graph here, this depression, it does fall under trend line. And remember trend line, we said that this is a line that measures a long-term economic growth. So it means that the moment the economy is under depression, there is no economic growth. Also, there is no economic development. Remember, if you say there is no economic growth, it does mean that there is stagnation when it comes to production of goods and services by businesses. Also, when you're saying that there is nothing when it comes to economic development, it does mean that now there is also stagnation when it comes to improvement in terms of the standard of living for those households. Okay, right. So now, if we check here, for our 1.2.1, we have G, which is economic activities at its lowest. So it means here the appropriate answer that we have here, we are going to have G. So then we have 1.2.3. The appropriate answer that we have here, we have ERV. and which is the key institution in the capital market in South Africa. So now we also have 1.2.3, which is A. And now this A that we have is the absence of excessive fluctuations in the GDP of a country. Then we have 1.2.4, the appropriate answer that we have here. We have D, which is a world organization that assists countries with the balance of payment problems. Then we have 1.2.5. 1.2.5 calls for E, and then the E that we have is a key institution in the capital market in South Africa. So now we also have 1.2.6. 1.2.6, we do have H, and this H that we have is a cause of changes in the level of technology. So now let's move on to 1.2.7, which is strategic industry. The appropriate answer that we have for this one is I. Remember, grade 12s, I did explain this. So this is a very important infrastructure and technology that cause large innovative spillover effect. And then last one, we have C, and then this C is improvement in the well-being and quality of people. Okay, right. So now, grade 12s, let's move on to the next question, which is 1.3. It does read as follows: give one term for each of the following descriptions. Write only a term next to the question number. So we're given an example there, 1.3.1 to 1.3.6 in the provided answer book. And if you still remember, abbreviations, acronyms are not considered. Okay, right. So now, here you only give one term or one concept. Don't abbreviate, don't give acronyms. Also, examples are not considered as well. So here, number 1.3.1, it does read as follows: a balancing figure in the calculation of the gross domestic product expenditure, that is called the word a residual item. Residual item, right? So now the second one, the next one, we have 1.3.2. It does read as follows: the process of estimating an unknown value using a known value. I explained this when we were dealing with the business cycles and the prediction concepts, when I was explaining moving average and extrapolation. This is nothing but extrapolation. This is extrapolation. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, let's move on to the next question. We have 1.3.3. A sub account of the balance of payments that records international transactions relating to the ownership of fixed assets. This is nothing but capital transfer account. Capital transfer account. Transfer account. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to 1.3.4. 1.3.4, it does read as follows: a trade policy whereby the state discourages the importing of certain goods and services. So this is nothing but import substitution. This is import substitution. Substitution. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to 1.3.5. It does read as follows: an increase in the capital input in the economy at a faster rate than the increase in the labor input. So this is nothing but the capital deepening. This is capital deepening. Okay, right, grade 12. Now let's move on to 1.3.6. An area where economic activities are concentrated. That is called economic hub. This is called economic hub. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, let's move on to the next question. Next question, we have question 1.1, in particular 1.1. Okay, right. So now, when it comes to 1.1, 1.1 it does read as follow. 1.1 reads as follow. Okay, right. So now, an open economy is best described as a dash sector economy. Remember, when you talk of an open economy, it does include different sector. And the moment it does include different sector, in that regard, it means that you are going to have 4 market participants because of the fact that you have 4 decision makers. So that is going to call for number 4 in any option given. So if you check the options given, you have 1A, we have B2, we have C3. So it means our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be D. One might ask why D? Because of 4 market participants. Because in an open economy, we have to include the what different sector. But in closed economy, we have what? We have the household, we have the firms, we have the government. There are only 3. But now open, now we include different sector that calls for what? For 4 in that regard. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.1.2. 1.1.2, it does read that follow. The vertical difference between a growth and then the next peak, it is referred to as a dash. It is referred to as an amplitude. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, let's move on to the next question. The next question, we have 1.1.3. It does read as follows. The lever curve shows the relationship between tax revenue and dash rate. So dash rate, it means what? It means dash. So now let's remind our brains. Let's remind our brains and what, and picture this gentleman Lever. If you still remember Lever, he does have what? He does have what, an argument when it comes to tax revenues as well as tax rate. So his argument, it is in line with tax when it comes to collection of revenues, and also when it comes to the rate that should be charged, or the rate that should be actually what tax. So remember, the rate we are actually referring to percentages. So in this regard, the appropriate answer is going to definitely be A. Okay, right. So grade 12, so let's move on to the next question, which is 1.1.4. 1.1.4 reads as follows. Financial capital held by the monetary authorities such as the central bank to finance the trading disequilibrium is referred to as dash. Okay, so the appropriate answer that you have here is what? Reserve assets. So now reserve assets that we have is now option B. Okay, right. So moving on to next question, we have 1.1.5. The practice of selling goods in a foreign country at lower prices than in the other country of origin. Damn, this is called dumping. So now that one is straightforward. That is option C. Option C. Why are they selling them with the lesser amount in other countries? Because those are goods and services that are not needed anymore. So what do? They can just sell them with the lesser amount so that they can what? They can get rid of them. So in that regard, under economics, we say that you are dumping because you are no longer in need of these goods and services, but now you just want to get rid of them. Then you see that, okay, let me just sell them with the cheaper amount so that you can actually come up with the amount that you have spent to acquire them. You just want to cover the amount that you have spent, or the cost that you have actually incurred. Okay, right. So now moving on to next question, we have 1.1.6. So 1.6 grade 12 reads as follows. The growth and development. Remember, grade 12 under economics, the moment you come across the word growth, in your mind, you should think of the production of goods and services by firms. And the moment you come across the word development, you should think of the standard of living of the household. That's the only approach that you should have under economics. So now, the growth and development policy that aims to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030 is called dash. Grade 12, remember, when you talk of the elimination is when you get rid of a certain concept. So in this regard, we eliminate poverty. It means we don't minimize poverty. We get rid of poverty totally. So now also inequality, we check the income earners. Remember, we have different classification of income earners. We have lower income earners, those people who are having less salaries or less income. We have middle income earners. Those are households that are having average. We also have higher income earners. Those are individuals that are having larger sums of money. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer for this option is going to be B, which is National Development Plan. If you still remember, each and every year here in South Africa, not only in South Africa, almost in each and every economy or almost in each and every country, there is a budget that should always be given to the individuals. And also, there is a plan for the nation or the plan for the country. So this National Development Plan, it is in line with the improvement of the standard of living for the household. Here, an economy is checking how best they can put their strategies in place so as to improve the standard of living for inhabitants. For typical example, here we check how South Africa can actually try by all means to put their strategies, their methods, their methodologies in place to make sure that they improve the standard of living for South Africans. So the plan, a word plan, it means that all the strategies, all the activities that you are trying to partake or to just take or to learn into, they should be written down. And this planning can be done electronically. You can use your cell phone to draw down your schedules. You can use your laptop to draw down your schedules, or you can use a manual planning. Manual planning, we talk of the hard copies, where now one is using a diary. That is the plan that you're actually referring to. So now the economy has to plan on how best they want to improve the standard of living for its inhabitants. Even us as individuals, we do have our planning at the personal level, which we call personal planning, where you all write the strategies or schedule out all the activities that you want to achieve or you want to pursue. Okay, right. So now, moving on, grade 12, we have 1.1.7. So 1.1.7 reads as follows. Unemployment resulting from mismatch between demand of labor and the skill of job seekers is referred to as dash. The moment there is a word mismatch of demand, so then that calls for supply as well. Grade 12, remember, in an economics, we always strive for demand always being equivalent to supply. Why are we always crying for that? Because whatsoever businesses manufacture, whatsoever businesses process, we're expecting households to buy or finish all of them. That is why we are saying that demand should always be equivalent to supply. So remember, when you talk of demand, we refer to the willingness and ability of consumers to buy goods and services. But when it comes to supply, we check the willingness and ability of businesses to sell goods and services. So it means there should always be equilibrium, or there should always be equality between the demand of goods and services by household and the supply of goods and services by businesses. Why are we saying that there should always be at equilibrium? Because the moment businesses do produce a lot of goods and services and demand is less, it means that there's no one who's buying those goods and services. And at the end of the day, an economy is going to experience what you call a market failure. And the moment there's a market failure, it means that businesses are going to suffer. And if businesses are going to suffer, it means almost everyone is going to be affected. How is that so? Okay, right. That is going to affect businesses because now businesses are going to generate lesser profits. And the moment businesses are generating lesser profit, it means that it is going to be a struggle for them to pay tax to the government. And the moment the government fails to collect enough tax, it means now the government is not going to be in a position, or it is not going to have the strength, or it is not going to have power to give a capital transfer or to give grants to what, to its inhabitants. Remember, grants are just given without work being done or without any service being rendered. So now most of the governments, they rely entirely on tax revenue. So if businesses are not generating enough tax, it means that the whole economy is going to be affected. Right. Okay. So now let's check the appropriate answer for this question. The appropriate answer that we have, structural employment. Okay, right, which is A. Okay, grade 12s. Let's move on to 1.1.8. 1.1.8 reads as follows: long-term deposits of the domestic sector at the monetary institution are part of dash money supply. That is M3, which is money supply. Okay, right. So now let's move on to next question, grade 12s. Next question that we have the matching concept. And remember matching concept, I told you that under matching concept, you should always try by all means that you go through the given set of concepts in column A. When you are done with that, then you move on to column B. Also go through the given set of descriptions, features or characteristics, as well as functions given. Create a picture. Don't be quick in this question. The moment you are quick, you end up facing disappointment because you end up selecting wrong options. Okay, right. So now residual item. The residual items that we have allows for all errors and omissions in GDP calculations, meaning the appropriate answer here is I. So we have open market transaction, buying and selling of government securities to influence the money supply. So this is our appropriate answer. Then privatization. Remember, privatization now is when governmental institutions or public institutions that are now actually been removed under the umbrella of the government. They are now going to be placed under the government of the private sector. So it means that when you talk of privatization, all the institutions that were owned by the government, they are now going to be private. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer in this regard is going to be transfer of ownership of government institution to ownership individual. So now our appropriate answer is age. So now we have 1.2.4, which is transfer payments. Our transfer payments, it is money received without any productive service rendered. Yeah, it's nice, just receiving without any service being rendered or without any job being done. So that is why when you talk of grants are being categorized under the umbrella of transfer payments or capital transfer, because money is actually being transferred from one platform to the next without service being rendered or work being done. Okay, right. So now we have 1.2.5, which is protectionism. Protectionism, here we have the trade policy that tries to keep the domestic economy safe by restricting the imports of goods and services rendered, meaning our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be C. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now let's move on to 1.2.6, where we have economic development. I did explain economic development in the aforementioned questions. Okay, right. So now 1.2.6, our appropriate answer is going to be B, the process by which the standard of living improves. Okay, right. Now let's move on to 1.2.7, which is regional development. Regional development aims to reduce the centralization of industries. So it means our appropriate answer in this regard, it is D. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.2.8. 1.2.8 reads as follows: life expectancy. So now here we check the time that an individual lives from the day he was born up until he dies. That is actually called the life expectancy. So now the appropriate answer for this is what? It is express the number of years a child born today is estimated to live. Meaning our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be A. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have 1.3, which reads as follows. Give one term for each of the following descriptions. Write only a term next to the question number. An example is given there. Also, grade 12, bear in mind that no abbreviations are needed and no acronyms are actually considered. Okay, right. So now 1.3.1 reads as follows. People who are able to make use of a good or a service without paying for it. These are called free riders. They ride for free. These are free riders. So under economics, everything has a price. Even lunch, there's no free lunch under economics. The moment someone invites you to come and eat lunch with them, under economics, we know that there should be something in return. That is why we say that there's no free riders and also there's no free lunch. Because we believe that as economists, everything has a price. Okay, right. So now 1.3.2 reads as follow. A policy that targets taxes and government expenditure to influence economic activity. Okay, because of the word tax and the word government expenditure, this calls for what you call fiscal policy. Fiscal policy, it is a governmental policy, meaning the government is the one in charge of this policy. And then this policy has two instruments. The instruments under this policy, we have taxation as well as government spending. So now, these two instruments, they should be used to what? In a different set of manner. Once the taxes are high, then it means the government spending should be low. And also, if government spending is high, then it means taxes should be low. It depends on the structure as well as the movement of the economy or the status of the economy. For typical example, if the economic activities are at trough, it means that economic activities are not doing fine. There is poor or there are poor performances when it comes to those economic activities, employment poor, businesses, when it comes to collection of taxes, when it comes to collection of profits, they can't collect enough profit. And in return, they can't pay tax as expected to the government. So the moment the economy or economic activities are at trough, it means now there is a struggle there. Then the government has to reduce taxation and then increase its spending. So it means there should be a reduction in terms of tax levy or charges, and then there should be increase in government spending. So also when it comes to the peak or boom, then in that regard reverses the case. It means at the boom or peak, the economic activities are performing well. There is enough creation of employment opportunities. Also, businesses are doing fine, and households are able to pay tax. The standard of living is fine. We have more of the exports than imports. Then, in that regard, then the government has to lower its spending, but increase tax. So, okay, right. So now, let me quickly also touch on the issue of the monetary policy, because we have started with the fiscal policy. So when you talk of the monetary policy is the policy where a central bank is in charge to stimulate the flow of goods and services. So now the instruments that the central bank uses to stimulate the flow of goods and services are what they are: interest rates as well as the money supply. In the same manner, under this policy, it does depend on the status of the economy. If the economy is doing fine, it means that now the central bank is going to increase its interest rates and then lower the money supply. But when the economic activities are burned or at a trough, it means now the government, the central bank is going to it is going to lower the test rate. It is going to lower the interest rate, but increase the the money supply. Okay, right. Great talks. So now I'm really sorry for that, because I just wanted to put clarity when it comes to these policies, because the question only demanded the issue of fiscal policy. But you never know in the next question if the question will require you to touch on a monetary policy. That is why I thought it was of great importance to touch on the monetary policy. Okay, right. So here, the appropriate answer, as I did say earlier, it is the fiscal. This is a fiscal policy. Okay, right, great talks. So now let's move on to the next question. Next question, we have 1.3.3. Exchange rate system can use forces of demand and supply. So this calls for what? Free exchange rate system. Why are we saying free exchange rate system? We are saying free because no monitoring is being done by central bank here. There is just influence of demand and supply for that particular currency. So then the concept that we are referring to here is a free exchange rate system. Free exchange rate system. Okay, right, great talks. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question reads as follows. Taxes levied on goods as they enter the country. That is nothing but tariffs. That is nothing but tariffs. Okay, right, great talks. Let's move on to 1.3.5. Measurement of the economic output per person. That is gross domestic product per capita. This is gross domestic products per capita, not per capital, per capita. So it means you omit all. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.3.6. 1.3.6 reads as follows. The distribution of employment and investment over a wide range of industrial activities. These are called what? Industrial diversification. Industrial diversification. Industrial diversification. Okay, right, great talks. So now let's move on to the next question. Okay, right, great talks. Moving on to the next question, we have 1.1.1. A small initial change in spending that produces a proportionately larger increase in income in the effect. That is nothing but the multiplier. You know, great talks, I love economics with all my heart, because economics, if you understand this concept, before you can even finish reading the question, already the answer comes. That picture, always create a picture in economics. And in that regard, don't just create a smaller picture, but the bigger picture. Okay, right. So now moving on to 1.1.2, a fiscal policy that attempts to stimulate economic activity, it is a dash. Okay, our appropriate answer in this regard, it is expanding, with this B. Okay, great talks. Moving on to next question, we have 1.1.3. Removal of unnecessary restrictions by law is dash. Guys, if you are able to check this set of questions, they are pretty close, similar to one another. Starting from the question one that we dealt with. Remember, we are dealing with different set of questions, but under same section. If you check, most of them, they are pretty similar to one another. So that is why, creators, I advise you, make sure that whenever you are revising, you understand the concept. If you don't understand the concept, don't hesitate to ask for any form of assistance. Okay, right. Like these restrictions, already discussed the issue of restrictions. Okay, right. So now in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be D, which is deregulation. Deregulation is when an economy or a country is getting rid of restrictions or lot of rules and regulations when it comes to the flow of goods and services. It can be local flow of goods and services, or the flow of goods and services can be amongst different set of countries. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question reads as follows. A payment made by the government to someone for whom there was no service rendered is called dash payment. No service rendered, no work done. What did I say? I did say that is nothing but a transfer. So meaning our appropriate answer in this regard is C. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 1.1.5. And now this 1.1.5 reads as follows. The infant industries argument justifies dash. So we have subsidies, dumping, protection, deindustrialization. Okay, right. So grade 12s, let me explain to you the meaning of this word subsidies. When we talk of a subsidy, we refer to the amount that the government has already paid on behalf of consumers to those businesses that do sell or produce goods and services. That is a subsidy. I'll come again. A subsidy, we refer to the amount that a government has already paid to businesses that sell goods and services or produce goods and services on behalf of consumers. That is the subsidy. I did explain dumping, I did explain protectionism and the industrialization. Okay, grade 12. So our 1.1.5 answer is going to be A, which is a subsidy. So our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be A. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, we have 1.1.6. Small, medium, micro enterprises create employment for dash unemployed people. So now, if we check here, people that can actually get employment because of small, medium, micro enterprises are those people who are falling under structurally employed, or they actually fall under structural unemployment. Okay, right. So now moving on to 1.1.7, we have this question that goes, regional development policies aim to reduce the effect of dash. That is actually going to be the effect of centralization. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.1.8, and it does read as follows. A situation where trade occurs without government interference is called dash trade. So now the appropriate answer in this regard is going to be free. Why free? Because there's no government intervention. Here, there's no one in charge of the rules of the game. When it comes to the rules of the game, they are actually being provided by the demand and supply of those goods and services. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have our 1.2.1. So on 1.2.1, we have moral suasion. So the appropriate answer is going to be South African Reserve Bank convinces commercial banks to extend credit responsibility, meaning our appropriate answer in this regard is E. Then let's move on to parastatals. Parastatals, the state-owned enterprises that provide public goods and services, which is C. Then we have 1.2.3, which is free floating. Free floating, we have exchange rate system determine the market forces, which is A. Then we have custom-free incentives. So these custom-free incentives, we refer to imports of raw materials or intermediate goods that are not taxed at all, which is H. Then we have land redistribution. Land redistribution, we check the returning of land to those citizens who lost it due to discriminatory laws of the past. Okay, right. So now, moving on, you have structural unemployment. So this structural unemployment, we check job losses due to economic going into recession. I did explain this recession. Okay, right. Moving on to the next question, we have 1.2.7, which is exchange rate. So now this one of exchange rate, we have the net gold exports that are listed here because of the historical significance in South Africa. So it means our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be I. Life expectancy. I need to explain it in a previous question. Okay, right. Great, 12. Now let's move on to next question, which is 1.3. Okay, right. So now 1.3.1 changes of these indicators only take place after the economy changes, after the economy has changes. That on its own, it calls for what? It does call for lagging indicator. Remember, grade 12s, I did explain the meaning of all of these indicators, what they do mean. I told you that when you talk of the leading indicator, it is a sign that changes before the economy has changed. Then we also have the lagging indicator. It does change after the economy has changed. Then we also have coincident. It does change the same time with the economy. And then we also have composite. It does combine all of those three indicators. Okay, right. So now 1.3.2 reads as follows. Individuals who benefit from public goods and services without paying for them. These are free riders. These are free riders. Okay, right. Let's check 1.3.3. Large-scale production activities whereby the entrepreneur's cost per unit decreases. That is called economies of scale. Okay, let me explain this concept of economies of scale, guys. Okay, we have economies of scale. We have constant economies of scale. Then we have these economies of scale. Remember, I said it earlier that under economics, we try by all means to maximize profits together with the minimizing of costs. Meaning we don't want to spend a lot, but we want to have higher results or higher output. Okay, right. So when you talk of economies of scale is when there is a higher output as a result of less spending. So meaning here, under economies of scale, there is an increase in output as there is a decrease in what? A decrease in the total spending. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.3.4. The institution that stimulate monetary policy in South Africa. So that institution is what? South African Reserve Bank. That is the institution. South African Reserve Bank is South African Reserve Bank. Okay, right. So now 1.3.5, the rate at which banks charge on loans to their most credit worthy clients. Okay, guys, let me explain these concepts before I can actually provide an answer for this. Okay, guys, we have two types of these interest rates. We have a repo rate as well as the prime rate. When we talk of the repo rate, we refer to the interest that is actually being charged by the what? By the central bank towards commercial banks like FNB, Standard Bank, Capitex, and the likes. So repo rate is charged by the central bank towards commercial banks. So when it comes to prime rate, it is charged by the commercial banks towards consumers. So it means now here this FNB Bank, FNB Bank, Standard Bank, Absa Bank, Capitec Bank, they charge what? They charge prime rate whenever individuals go to the bank to take out loan. So one might ask, how come a central bank is able to charge commercial banks repo rate? Okay, right. Guys, what I can actually assure you is that this money is that banks or commercial banks collect on daily basis, those deposits, they're actually being kept at the central bank. Their commercial banks, they don't keep any money there or any larger sums of money. So now, whenever they are, or sometimes in short of money, they can also as well borrow money from the central bank together with some interest charged. Okay, right. So now let's check the answer. So in this regard, our answer is going to be a prime rate. Yes, I did as well explain what? Explain the repo rate, because the question will not always require the prime rate. Sometimes the question might require the repo rate. So that is why I think it's of a great importance to explain these two concepts. Okay, right. Now let's move on to 1.3.6. It does read as follows. The increase in the population number of cities in the country. In towns. So that is what? That is urbanization. Whenever urbanization, whenever we have urbanization, whenever we have large number of people live in rural areas to join towns or cities, then we call that urbanization under economics. Okay, right. So now moving on, grade 12s, we have what we have. This question. This question reads as follows. Vector costs include debts such as salaries and wages. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C. So moving on to the second question, which is 1.1.2. The open market requirement is an instrument of the Desham policy. So the appropriate answer in this regard is going to be monetary policy, which is B. So moving on, we have 1.1.3 that reads as follows. A plan of estimated government expenditure that covers a period of 3 years is known as a medium. So that one is going to be what? It is going to be medium-term expenditure framework, which is A. Okay, right. So now 1.1.4 reads as follows. The shortest business cycle with a duration of 3 to 5 years is called the Desham cycle. So that is nothing but kitchen. That is a kitchen. So remember, we have different types of business cycles, and these business cycles, they are categorized, or they do differ from one another when it comes to time frame in terms of years. Okay, right. Now let's move on to 1.1.5. 1.1.5 reads as follows. South Africa joined as a full member of the Dash Bloc countries in the year 2011. So in the year 2011, I know in the year 2011, there was a time South Africa joined BRICS. And even today, even this year, if you still remember grade 12s, there was a time when there was a BRICS summit in South Africa, in particular, Gauteng province, if my mind serves me well, or was it in Cape Town? But I think it's 2 months, 2 months old. Yeah, 2 months back. Yeah, the summit was here in South Africa. And if you guys, you do follow what current affairs, or you do read newspapers on daily basis, there are even other countries like Iran, Iraq, who are now eager to join this BRICS association. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer for this is going to be what? Is going to be D. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, we have what? Next question, we have 1.6. 1.6, the policy that was first implemented in 1994 to focus on the provision of housing, water, electricity, and public health care, the poor is called. What's so important about 1994? What is so important about 1994? 1994 is so important because that was the time when ANC came into power under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. So now the moment ANC came into power in 1994, that's when they tried by all means to revise all the acts or the rules and regulation that was governing the country. They were trying by all means to make sure that those households that were previously disadvantaged, they are as well being accommodated in the economy. And also remember, before 1994, there was the apartheid era, and during apartheid era, most of these black people, black-skinned people, they were so disadvantaged. So now, after ANC came into power, it tried by all means to revise all the set of rules that were there in place. Then they tried to accommodate each and every person, regardless of the race, regardless of the language, regardless of the age, regardless of the height. They were actually trying by all means to accommodate each and every individual. Why were they doing that? Because before 1994, remember, black people were mostly disadvantaged. Okay, right. So now, in this regard, the appropriate answer that we have is going to be D, which is Reconstruction Development Program, which is RDP houses. RDP houses. That is Reconstruction and Development Program. Those are one of the what examples that ANC tried by all means to fix the moment they came into power. If you check today as we speak, how many RDP houses the South African government has built up to this far? There are so many. Okay, right. So now, why did they try by all means to build those houses? So as to make sure that they improve the standard of living of its inhabitants. Okay, right. So moving on to 1.1.7, it reads as follows. If the index of export price is higher than the index of import prices, it shows that the dash is positive. So that on its own, it shows that the terms of trade is possible. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.1.8. It does read as follows. The relationship between goods produced and the resources used to produce them is known as day. That is what? Productivity. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, which is 1.2.1. 1.2.1, it does read as follows. Residual item, we have the figure used to correct errors in the calculation. Here we have I. If you check this residual item question, it has been repeating like no man's business. So it means that you should be in the position to understand this concept. So you can even visit different resources. Don't rely on the educators lesson notes, because the notes normally they give a summary of the concept. They don't give the in-depth of the concept. That is why it is always advisable to use different set of resources, not entirely depending on one resources. Okay, great, 12, right. So now we also have endogenous reasons. Endogenous reasons in this regard, we check the vectors from within the market system that leads to changes in the level of economic activities, which is D. So now moving on, we have 1.2.3, which is price stability. Then we check the inflation rate of between 3% to 6% in South Africa. So now let's move on to 1.2.4, the free floating exchange rate. I did explain this one as well. Then the price of currency is determined purely by market forces or demand and supply. Then let's move on to 1.2.5, free trade area. So free trade area, in this regard, we said the member countries agree to abolish tariffs among themselves, but levy tariffs on non-members. Hey, okay, right. So now let's check 1.2.6, demand side policy. So demand side policy, we check the measures that are implemented to influence the aggregate spending in an economy. So in this regard, let me check the demand side policy. We check measures that are implemented to influence the aggregate spending in an economy. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be B. Okay, right. So 1.2.7, we have skill support program. So now this one, we check the financial incentives aimed at helping to improve the quality of work. So in this regard, we have C. Then we have the system of national accounts. System of national accounts. We have the United Nations recommends its use in order to standardize the calculation of social and economic indicators. Okay, right, grade 12. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have 1.3. So this question reads as follows. A market for short-term savings loans, this is nothing but money market. And also we have what? Also we have the market for long term. Why do I have to take into account the market of long term? I'm taking into account the market of long term because you never know if some questions can require one to mention the long term. Okay, right. So now also the market for long term loans, we refer to capital market. Market for long term loans, capital market, market for short term loans, then we have money market. So then we also have financial market. Financial market is the umbrella of both. Under financial market, we have the money market as well as the capital market. Okay, right, great talks. Now let's move on to 1.3.2. Does read as follow. The lower turning point of a business cycle. The lower turning point of a business cycle, as I did explain earlier, that we have what? We have a peak, and then here we have a draw. So now here is the upper turning point, and then this one is the lower turning point. So in short, this is what? This is a draw. Okay, right, great talks. Moving on to the next question. Public goods that are characterized by non-excludability and non-recovery. So it means here there's no competition. You don't compete to use public good. Public good is for everyone. So those goods are what? Those goods should be consumed by everyone. For these goods that you can say, there shouldn't be any competition when it comes to its consumption. There shouldn't be any competition when it comes to protection from the police. There shouldn't be any competition when it comes to protection from the army or from the force. So that is why we are saying that this can actually be considered as community goods. These are community goods. Each and every person in the community should have security from police, should have security from soldiers. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. We have 1.3.4. 1.3.4 reads as follows. The number of children per 1,000 births who die before the age of 1 year in a year. So these are what called infant mortality. This is infant mortality. Mortality. Okay, right, great talks. Now let's move on to 1.3.5. Indirect taxes that are levied on imported goods and services. So those are import duties. These are import duties. Now we have 1.3.6. The return of land to its rightful owners who lost its land due to discriminatory. This is land restitution. Grade 12, if you can check, economics is so simple. It is so simple. Restitution. In order for it to be simple, it means you should maximize revising different set of past exam papers. Don't rely only on one question paper or one resources. Okay, right. Various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the correct answer, right? So 1.1.1, the type of consumption of household spending, which is independent of income, it is called autonomous consumption. The highest turning point of a business cycle is known as the highest turning point of a business cycle. It is called what? A peak. Remember, I only have two turning points, a peak and a trough. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next one. The next one, we have 1.3. The government level that consists of metropoles, districts, and municipalities is called dash. It is called what? Provincial, which is B, right? So moving on to the next question. Next question, we have 1.4. The exchange rate system, where currencies are devaluated or revaluated by the central bank, is called the dash exchange rate. So this one of re and devaluated, it means that the institution is the one what in charge of that. Okay, right. So the appropriate answer, it is going to be what? It is going to be D, which is matched floating. The appropriate answer is going to be D, which is matched floating. So now we have the selling goods in foreign country at lower prices than in the country of origin. That is what? That is dumping, which is B. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question, which is question 1.1.6. The growth and development policy that aims to eliminate poverty in 2012, which is 1.6. Our appropriate answer is going to be A, 1.6. 1.6, appropriate answer is going to be A. So let's share 1.7. The entire policy that encourages industrial development in a few urban areas is called C, which is centralization. Okay, if you check it, most of these questions, they're pretty close to one another. It needs someone who's very smart when it comes to attempting such types of questions. Okay, right. 1.1.8, a higher standard of living is directly related to education. Good. Okay, right, great tops. So now we have now landed on what? We have now landed on 1.2. So the multiplier that we are referring to in this regard, we have the change in what? The change in spending as a result in a much bigger change in income. Meaning our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be H. Then we have financial derivatives. Then we have the financial contracts that get their value from underlying assets. This is B. Then we have state owns, which is parastatal. Then our state owned, we have what? We have a business that is partly or wholly owned by the government. Then we have taxation 1.2.4. Our taxation in this regard, we have the compulsory contribution by the citizens of a country to the state office, which is I. Then we have urbanization 1.2.5. So 1.2.5, we have what? Increased number of people living in cities and and the like. So we have integrated manufacturing strategy. So integrated manufacturing strategy, we do have what? We do have strengths, institutional capacity, and actually development. Okay, right, great tops. So now we have what? We have landed on 1.2.7, expanded public works program. So in this regard, we have the government intervention to create employment using labor-intensive method. So okay, right, great tops. Now we have subsidies. I did explain the word subsidy. So we have financial incentives by the state to help businesses to produce more. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have 1.3.1, and then 1.3.1 reads as follows: total remuneration for the vectors of production received by the people of South Africa nationally is nationally in a given period is called what? Gross domestic product. This is gross national product, which is G and P. Okay, right. And then we have the measures taken by the government in respect of taxation, government spending, and borrowing to influence economic growth. That is nothing but what? Fiscal policy. This is fiscal policy. And then we have a form of credit that the International Monetary Fund can use when a country experiences balance of payments disequilibrium. This is special drawing rights. This is what? Special drawing right. Special drawing right. Okay, 1.3.4, we have what? We have a worldwide exposure integration of economies with trade as a key element. This is nothing but globalization. Okay, right, great talks. So now, a purpose-built industrial estate linked to an airport or seaport with export as the main objective. This is industrial development zone. Industrial development zone, right. 1.3.6, an increase in the number of people in a country. That is nothing but population growth. Population growth. Okay, right, great tops. Let's move on to the next question. Next question reads as follows: the market in which one country's currency can be traded for other countries' currency is called dash. That is called what? Is called foreign exchange market, which is Forex. Okay, right. 1.2, 1.1.2, transfer of functions and ownership of entities from the private sector to the public sector. That is nothing but nationalization. I did explain. So now we have what? We have the inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation is illustrated by Mr. Philip, which is option B. A situation where one country has a relative advantage in the production of goods and services. That is comparative advantage, which is D. Good. So now we have 1.1.3. The removal of trade practices that prevent the free flow of goods and services between countries is called, trade liberation. Okay, right. So now moving on, we have 1.6. The program places emphasis on training to enable and trainees to enter the formal workforce or create a livelihood for themselves. So, okay, grade 12. In this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be a national skill development strategy. Then we have 1.1.7, the tract of land that forms a pathway allowing access from one area to another is referred to as a corridor. Okay, a corridor because of this gentleman pathway. Okay, right. So now 1.1.8, number of children who die before reaching 1 year of age is known as infant mortality. Is it there? Okay, right. Okay, right, grade 12. Okay, right, grade 12. Then we have the last but not the least that we have. Give one term for each of the following description. Write only the term next to the question number. An example is given 1.3.1 up until 1.3.6 in the answer book provided. And also abbreviation and acronyms are not considered. Okay, right. So now let's check 1.3.1. An individual or a family of people that live together, have a joint income and make decisions together. That is what? Households. These are nothing but households. Indicators that give consumers or businesses and the state a glimpse of the directions in which the economy might be heading. That is a leading indicator. Leading indicator. Okay, right, grade 12. So now we have the output per worker in a particular period of time. So this output per worker in a particular period of time we have, because of a word worker and the output, this calls for productivity. So now this is going to be labor. This is going to be labor productivity. Sorry? Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to 1.3.4. The worldwide interaction of economies with trade as an important element that is called globalization. Okay, right. So now moving on, grade 12, we have regional development initiative aimed to extract infrastructure and business investments to neglected and underdeveloped areas. So now this is nothing but spatial development initiative. Spatial development initiative. Okay, the last but not the least, the deliberate decrease in the value of the currency in terms of another currency as a result of central bank interaction, that is called what? Devaluation. Okay, grade 12s. What I can actually tell you guys, whenever you are faced with a section A under economics, we are expecting you to collect all the marks. One might say it's not possible. Yes, it is possible. Only when you do what you do, refer to different set of textbooks or different set of writings. Don't only rely only on one resource, but rely on different resources. So now, grade 12s, I wish you all the best in your exams, and we're expecting each and every individual to score higher marks in section A. So in this regard, I'll see you in the next lesson when we are discussing other topics. So I'll